So on my much slicker produced channel, Navigating Patterns, I do these live streams where I dress up as a pirate, because of course I do. And that's why the board's not cleaned, because I didn't clean it from the last live stream. The next live stream is going to be on sort of three things that I wanted to discuss here. First, you get it first. Let's do a members channel, huh? Contemplation, reflection, and rumination. Now, this channel, of course, is not really about what Navigating Patterns is about, but to kind of put things together. So I figured it'd be a good place to practice this particular upcoming live stream. The interesting thing that I realized earlier today about contemplation, reflection, rumination is that these are three features we've lost in the computer industry already. So a lot of this rambling and ranting that I do here is all about the fact that the computer industry already went through the meaning crisis. It's already hit the meaning crisis, already had its meaning crisis. If that's a valid way to think about it, and obviously I think it is, or I wouldn't bring it up. Contemplation is relating to your perspective on what's around you in the moment, we'll say, right? Whereas reflection is sort of looking back on your past, right? And rumination, and this is the interesting part, I got this from Mathieu Peugeot, who wrote The Language of Creation, wonderful book. Everybody should read that book. It's fantastic. He thinks rumination is when you seriously sit down and consider your axiomatic assumptions, right, or your framing or something. And I think that's right. I think that's deeply correct. The computer industry doesn't know where it came from. It doesn't understand what assumptions it's making. Work with software teams for many, far too many years. And a lot of those people don't know computer science 101 from 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 or 50 years ago. They don't know Claude Shannon's information theory. They just don't know this stuff, which is fine. And maybe they don't need to know all of it, or maybe even most of it. They don't know any of it. And so they do things, and it's like, it's not that you're reinventing the wheel. It's that you're trying to reinvent a wheel we know we can't make. And so that let's just put rumination aside. That's one problem. Like, they don't know what axiomatic assumptions came out of information theory, came out of computer science 101. They don't understand any of that. Fine, fair, whatever. Who cares? To some extent. Like, seriously, to some extent, who cares? Some of it's important, some of it's not. We don't have as reflection either, though. We're not looking back on our past work and saying, how is this good? How is this bad? Like, software teams aren't doing that. It's all move forward. And you can say, Mark, agile, and there's this whole, that goes back like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 week, whatever your sprint time is. And sometimes it goes back to the project, but it never really goes back to like, why are we here? Like, why was this team formed, and what is our purpose, and how has it changed? That would be good reflections to have. And we don't have any contemplation, and contemplation might be, did we write good software? So one thing that I see all over the place is, it's very clear to me that no one's doing QA at all of any kind. Basic QA tasks are just not done in the computer industry anymore. A lot of people say, oh, we have testing. I'm like, all right. If you release software that doesn't work, your testing is either non-existent or insufficient or inconsequential or something, right? It's that simple. So if you want to tell me you have proper testing or good testing, you better tell me you have almost no bugs. Because if you have bugs, you didn't test your software. It's really that simple. There are a few exceptions to this, but only a few, right? And so the fact that, like, Google crawls my website and can't read the XML site file, even though anybody can bring it up on a browser on their machine, is a significant indication that they're not testing something and that they got basic code wrong somehow. Don't ask me how. I can't figure it out. I sort of consider it a huge feat of engineering that they could create such a bug. It must have taken them thousands of man hours to make that do that. It's also inconsistent, and it's been there for 5 months, and it's been reported to Google. and they still haven't fixed it. Obviously, if you contemplate this situation for a second, you'll realize they're not QAing their products. They can't be. They're also not reflecting on what are we doing and why are we doing it, right? Because if it were that important, they'd fix it. And I'm going to argue, of course, that goes back to lack of rumination. Like whatever they're doing is so complicated that it doesn't work. And that may sound contradictory, but it's not. Like sometimes a simple problem, like actually just grabbing a URL and parsing an XML file, which is all a sitemap is in this particular case, should be easy. Like I could write that from scratch by myself in C in maybe 3-4 days, fully debugged. It's not that much code. It's not that hard. I bet they have 500,000, 1 million or 2 lines of code, somewhere in that range to do that. It doesn't take that much code, guys. It just doesn't. You can always write more code to do a simple thing. Always. But a good engineer writes the least amount of code to do a thing, not the most. And we've entered an era where we're just hiring, quote, computer engineers who actually aren't engineers and don't know computers. And we're teaching them variables and recursion and sending them out into the world and saying, here's all your frameworks and your tools. Well, they don't know how those frameworks interact. They're not ruminating. Where did this stuff come from? What are the inherent assumptions in the frameworks I'm using? And how does that impact my coding style, the things that I can do, the way that I do them? Because your frameworks do determine all of those things or do impact all those things. We're not doing that rumination. We're not doing the reflection. Does this work? Does it work correctly? Are we testing it? Are we certain? They're not doing that. And they're not doing the contemplation, right? They're not thinking about how does this affect us now? Like what about the code we're writing today? There's no time for it in Agile. Agile is just go, 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 go. Like there's no like stop, contemplate, reflect, ruminate, process. And you should have that in your life. But you should certainly have it if you're doing a big group project. Like these things that we've squeezed out because they're non-material, right? They're not easy to grasp and they don't seem to have anything to do with software. We squeezed them out of all of life. Again, I'll be arguing that in my live stream coming up on Friday on Navigating Patterns at 7 p.m. Eastern, by the way. Or you can watch it after the fact and like, subscribe, comment to Navigating Patterns, of course, because why wouldn't you? We're not doing that in our life, but we're certainly not doing the software industry anymore. There used to be quite a bit of time between projects. I mean, if you think about the difference between, say, rapid application development, Agile is probably the most popular and famous and well-known technique. It's only one of them, though. There's lots of sub-techniques and alternate techniques in rapid application development. I'm not a fan of RAD, by the way. I'm fine with rapid application development. I have my way of thinking about how to do it, though, and what it's for and what it's not for. What it's not for is developing all software. Like, that's definitely not true. What it's good for is developing usable mockups, right? So that you can recode everything at scale, which is what you should do, right? Code it in Python first or something, and then code it correctly in a real programming language later. C, Rust, whatever, Go, don't care. That way your front-end design components are already correct. You can test your thesis with your RAD. Doesn't take much, right? That's the proper way to do that. The way it used to work, though, was 80% design, 20% coding. So what does 80% design mean? It means your software engineers aren't sitting writing code for the most part. They're ruminating on the core assumptions needed to meet the business requirements. They're getting those business requirements, right? They're contemplating what does it take for those business requirements. And they're reflecting on their past projects and how that might play into how to get those business requirements done. So one way to think of it is it's 80% contemplation, reflection, and rumination, and 20% implementation and testing. test-driven development is a weird, incorrect way to do things. One of the problems with test-driven development is you write 4 times as much code in tests than you write an actual executable. That might be a hint that it's a bad idea. Test-driven development was done for a specific reason, and it is no longer needed. That reason is irrelevant. And we've lost all that. No one's ruminating. Hey, why do we do this? Maybe we don't need to do this anymore. Maybe this is the thing we need to replace and not this. That would be proper rumination. So again, I think the software industry went through its meaning crisis and it's collapsed as a result of not resolving it. And the collapse is due to this lack of contemplation, reflection, and rumination. And I think I've laid out a reasonable case here. If you disagree, please comment. If you agree, comment. Either way, I'm going to do a live stream on this. It's not going to be about computers. I might mention computers. We'll see. I probably will, given this, now that I've kind of got my thoughts out there, out of my head a little bit. Maybe I'll put it in my notes for Friday. But yeah, just a quick rant. I thought it was an interesting observation on my part. And let me know what you think.